And all of these dates give our staff due dates that they don't have to guess at, that we certainly don't have to guess at for them. And it gives some reliability on how to do these things at the right time every time. I love the due date tool. Okay. So clearly we have accomplished a lot over the last 2 years. We have reliable data. We can track activities. We have a transparent process and consistent tools and processes to follow. And the staff really has, whenever you're able to achieve success, the staff really gets jazzed and they like to say, well, what's next? One of our bigger challenges still is being able to use our code in a way that provides clarity, reliability, and removes redundancy. So I'd like that to be our next area of process improvements, where staff have to go to sometimes a half dozen places to answer one question in our code. Code can be made a little more clear, be less made up of paragraphs and more made like the joy of cooking. And our foundation that we've been able to establish has really given us a lot of energy and a lot of much more enjoyment in our jobs. I think that's it. Oh, well, here are my new review targets that are going to be activated next week. And this is in keeping with our Senate Bill 5290 reporting requirements. And process improvement is continuous. So it's continual for this, and it's continuous as we look elsewhere where we could always improve processes. So thank you so much for this opportunity to share this great news with you. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you. That was comprehensive and very helpful, very reassuring. And it's a foundation for much better situation. Are there questions or comments? Mayor Matthews, please.
Just wanted to say thank you, Patty. And we were on a tour today, and I don't remember the gentleman's name, but I just wanted to say how complimentary he was. He said, and I will find it out and email it to you, but he just said we were lucky to have Patty Sharness. And do you remember his name?
I don't.
Yeah, but so I just wanted to relay that.
I think from your work on the county with.
Yeah, well, I'll find out. So thank you. We're lucky to have you. And this trend is looking great. What is our average days permit time? That came up today too on the tour that Bremerton's was 75 days and they thought that was long. And I was like, I think maybe, what are we? So we didn't know.
It does depend on the permit type, but I'd say on average, our building permits are getting processed in 45 to 60 days. And our planning permits probably 60 to 72 days, I believe it is. And there are outliers. Okay.
I was thinking of my parents.
Yeah.
Councilmember Hytopoulos.
I don't think I was next. No, I was. I don't know.
Oh, I didn't see your light there. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Patty. I guess I just wanted to say it's good to see the progress, and it's always good to have a Six Sigma. I don't know if they were a black belt or green belt or black belt, yellow belt. Yeah, it's always good I'm a green belt. It's always good to have that, so to point out where you're wasting time, and I guess you said it took 2 years to get back in gear where we are. Are you going to be doing like an annual review so that you can keep track of making sure you're hitting all of your targets?
Actually, council member, we do that on a weekly basis. I get 4 reports every Friday that show me where permits are, what we've gotten in, and where they are in their life cycle. And the one report that I get on Fridays is my favorite. It's called the last step report. And that's one more step that needs to be done before that can be processed. And you look at those timeframes and you try to figure out where's the hangup. And so we have a lot of reports. It isn't just annual, it's weekly.
Councilmember Hytopoulos and then Councilmember Dietz.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. And it was really wonderful to have all of that really meaty feedback to help us understand what you're doing. And it's obviously something that any of us who've campaigned around the island, et cetera, we've heard for years concerns. And so appreciated that this effort's being made. Thank you.
Member Deeds.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor and Director Charnas. Thank you so much. It's great to get this news because
Yeah.
like you said, it's on our list here. It's nice to have that addressed. You know, it was a regular thing to get complaints from people about permitting and maybe it's funny when in the absence of complaints, that means approval. I'm starting to suspect. So I have not heard of a complaint outside what I just heard. So the absence of complaints means something, and that is excellent. Well done, very good. It sounds like, you know, we're just kind of continuing with the process, and you know, of course, there's always improvements to be made. So thank you very much.
Councilmember Schneider.
Patty, I'm gonna sound like a broken record here, but yes, thank you very much. And likewise, I have for years heard the stories, and some of them were pretty darn scary stories. And I haven't heard any lately, but I'm going to be kind of checking back in now that I have the confidence of having heard what I heard. So really appreciate it. And yeah, it's great to feel that sense of confidence.
Councilmember Morawaki.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm going to save my voice. I'll amplify what Councilmember Deeds said. I think when people aren't complaining, it means you're doing something well. And the fact that these permits of turnaround, you had 261 down to 30 or something, 88%, I think I saw that number there. That's quite remarkable. So, you know, we should beat our chest once in a while when something's really accomplished. So thanks so much, Patty, and for your whole department.
Patty, I have a question about how the work gets done on a complex project. I've been assuming that there are situations where there are several planners with different perspectives or expert knowledge. Is it a team effort, or is it typically one planner who follows the process from beginning to end?
Deputy Mayor, it used to be where our customers would plan or shop because they knew they would get different answers depending on who they contacted.
Yeah.
That does not happen anymore.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, I think our customers, if they're frustrated with the answer, they want another answer and they'll try, but they'll get the same answer.
Mhm.
And there are complex ones out there, really tough ones. The nature of our island and the environment in particular, you know, there's places of high water table, low water table, and it's really difficult when it comes to our natural resource protections to accurately figure out where those are. And then people, you know, they want to understand, but when we give them the answer they don't want to hear, they too make things more complex and extend the time. So complexity takes many shapes and forms.
Yeah.
But the good news is that they won't get a different answer depending on the person they talk to.
Uh-huh. Well, it's great what you've been able to accomplish, you and the team. It's building spirit and confidence and sort of rapport with the whole process. It's great. Councilmember Itopoulos.
Yeah, real quick, I was just kind of thinking back to something that you said, Director Charnas, that struck me and sounded very familiar to me about not having all the paragraphs we have rather than, like you said, like a joy cooking. And I just want to put in a plug for that whenever we have the time. I'm sure it's after the comprehensive plan process, but that we just have sort of an ongoing check-in. I just assume that we have a stream coming from staff on, hey, we need to look at this section. We need to look at this section because I think we do have some pretty poorly written code, and it must have a lot, you know, must certainly impact the differences in interpretations, et cetera. And so anyway, I hope that we'll have a chance to do that in the future.
Mayor Matthews.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Mayor, really quickly, I had a thought the other night that was maybe a nightmare, I'm not sure, about us using AI or AI to write our comp plan. And we did it and we were all done and we turned it in and they were checking it and they were like, it's AI. It was something weird. But then I got to thinking, when you were just speaking, are there any sort of AI technologies for permitting?
Through the chair, we have recently issued our AI policy, and there are a couple of things we specifically call out that are not allowed at this time. There are two. One is you cannot rely upon AI for legal advice. Two, you cannot use AI to substitute for a planner review of plans. So we are not allowing AI to be used for that. We're requiring that they be reviewed by a planner. We don't have the confidence yet, just for the same reason why we don't like AI to be used for legal advice. You can, but there's been some notable examples of things going very wrong. And the same thing in terms of the expectation that you just put something in and AI will spit out the answer. So for right now, that's one of two things that we do not allow staff to use AI for. Now, preparing a report or things like that associated with that, that's perfectly fine. Again, our policy requires that you have to give credit that you used AI to prepare the report, but you cannot use AI to analyze a set of plans, for example.
Thank you.
I'll just make one comment about my experience. What we see at the end of a process, the planner's report, I have a lot of sympathy for the planners who have a great deal of information to present with perfect clarity. I sometimes feel more labor went into this than was necessary. And I would counsel planners to be as efficient as possible. Maybe there's a simpler way than the writing of each paragraph from scratch, summarizing comprehensive plan consistency and everything that there may be some streamlining that's possible that would save time. And at the end of the process, we do want something that is going to stand up in court, because consistency, performance in line with the conditions and all that stuff. So it is work to be proud of, and I really admire that. But it doesn't have to be a thing of beauty and a joy forever. Thank you very much, Patty. And our next thing, I guess, you again. Yeah.
Just something that wasn't talked about, because we can use SmartGov and now we can track individual permits. We now have the capability of an individual permit to track how long that permit, for example, was in-house. And then the amount of time that time's taken when the permit is returned for corrections to the applicant, and then how long the applicant has that permit.
Yes.
And what that's allowed us to do is, if someone says this permit has been here pick out the time, we can go to that permit specifically and say, well, we had the permit for 35 days and you had that permit for 3 months. So that has also it helped in terms of addressing the factual situations of how long it's taking to process a permit. And that's something that the director didn't mention, but it's been an important tool for us when we engage with the public in terms of how long does the permit take. And then finally, I just want to make an observation. The city had bought SmartGov. It's the platform that we used. It was the popular platform. But I mentioned this for the city clerk's sake. The parent company of SmartGov is Granicus. And as Granicus has a little bit of a reputation for planned obsolescence, and we're starting to go through that with some other products we have. You can look at the city clerk, she's nodding her head. We do not know if it's going to be the same situation with SmartGov, but we are looking at some other software products to replace Granicus, and there may be a domino effect then with SmartGov. So I will say, just when we got SmartGov working for us, there are some other elements with the parent company that we're looking at as well.
Our item 3B is to consider the establishment of a post-project completion condition compliance review process. So again, our planning director? No? No, how will we go with this?
Well, if I could, I'm gonna
Yeah.
present, offer an explanation here from the dais. And I'm sorry for the word salad here. But what asking the council to do is to authorize me to work with the planning department and the planning commission to establish a system to evaluate condition compliance for post-completed projects.
Mhm.
Anecdotally, a common complaint from the public is that once a project is completed, the staff is and the city is not reviewing whether the conditions that were imposed upon that project are still continuing. Whether that's a problem or not, it's a comment that we hear. Many projects are approved with various types of conditions. Those conditions may be landscaping palette. They may be public access, trails. They may include certain physical features, NPDS standards, garbage enclosures, a whole variety of permits. Those permits typically, if you have sat through planning commission meetings, or a lot of thought goes into the permits, and hours may be spent upon imposing the conditions in a perfect manner. The project will be completed or receive a certificate of occupancy, but then as time goes by, we do not have an established way to verify whether those improvements or conditions that were the project was approved based upon are still there. What I'm suggesting is a system that has worked in other cities is that on a random basis, whether it be quarterly or semi-annually, and the idea here is we're not trying to impose additional work upon planning staff or any other body or either the planning commission or the city council, is that from the universe of permits that were approved during a particular period of time, let's say a 6-year period of time, we randomly would pick a permit and then physically compare what's on the ground at the site now against what the conditions are. For example, was that trail that's required still there? Is the landscaping that was required still there? Is the special garbage container that was required being used for that purpose or not being used for that purpose? And then a report will be prepared and provided to either the planning commission or the city council. We haven't gotten that far yet. For the purpose of seeing how are applicants doing or how are we doing in terms of ensuring that the conditions are still there. Also, there's another piece to that. It's also assessing whether those conditions actually are addressing the issue in which they're intended to address. A lot of times the conditions are imposed to mitigate certain issues. Well, if the issue is still continuing, even with the condition there, we can conclude that that was probably not a condition and something different should be done with a similar application in the future to achieve and accomplish the objectives we want to accomplish. I want to bring this up to you in study sessions, something that we haven't done. But again, it's something that I've seen performed in other cities. The sweet spot is how we can do this without imposing additional work upon staff or the planning commission or the city council, but have something that's credible that we can point to have a feeling that, yes, we do go back and we revisit applications after they're completed to see if the conditions are still there.
Councilmember Hytopoulos and then Councilmember Frantroy Johnson.
Yeah, I just want to say I wholeheartedly endorse this. I think it's long overdue. I don't know if other cities do it. Maybe they don't. So I think maybe we'll be, I think you mentioned you've seen it done before. Okay. Well, it's been a complaint and a concern for many years that when we have a mitigated determination of non-significance and whatever, we've got this and that's going to happen, or people are just unhappy with the project. And then, certain things are given in exchange for things that we don't like. Whether those exist. And I won't say anything here now, but I could call out several big instances where there is an amenity that is no longer available or wasn't provided. And so I think this is a very good idea.
Councilmember Frantroy Johnson and then Councilmember Dietz. And I see Councilmember Marwaki also.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea also, but I just wonder if a process could be built in to check all of them and not randomly check it. I think as part of understanding now what the workflow is and understanding where you are, the only way you're going to get continuous improvement is to continually improve, right? So you have to check all of them to make sure that you know, and I'm looking at this as a way to build it maybe from the software, maybe have the software send out letters to find out, are you, so that there isn't an added stress on staff to understand what were those things you had, those conditions that you had, and are you living up to them?
Councilmember Deeds
Great,
and
thank
then
you.
Mayor Matthews.
Thank you, and I'm happy to make the motion too after my comment, but yeah, no, I concur. This is great news because as we all know, we've received comments from constituents saying, my next door neighbor is not complying with what they were supposed to do. So I guess in addition to randomly, with that in mind, that actually people on the ground being like neighbors could be our best source of information. In addition to randomly selecting a project, maybe if there is reason, let's just say a complaint, maybe have that as perhaps included in the pool, so that we're taking advantage of information that's provided by people who care about that, whatever is happening on the site. So I'll go ahead, make a motion, and then we still have discussion. So endorse the city manager's efforts to work with the planning department and planning commission to establish a post-project completion condition compliance review process.
I'll second it.
Yes, will we deliberate and vote on that in a study session?
This is informal direction, no final actions being
Yeah,
taken.
yes. Perhaps
Councilmember Morawaki.
we have Councilmember Morawaki, then the mayor, then Councilmember Schneider. Yes.
My turn.
So Councilmember Morawaki.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Whitson. Yeah, some of the comments that I've been waiting to say have already been said. I think it's smart, and I think Councilmember Dietz alluded to it, but a lot of times we hear complaints, and I think all of us have, where a project is done, but this wasn't part of the permit, or there's a complaint that this development didn't follow through on a promise they made on X. And they ask, why wasn't anybody monitoring the completion, or were the and there's projects and there are projects. Some projects are much more complex, some are not really that big of a deal. And so it's the ones that really have a lot of, as Councilmember Hitopoulos alluded to, ones that have certain mitigations or requirements that the community wanted, or that we wanted for right-of-way access or whatnot. So I just think it's just a smart policy just to jump in. I don't think we should do it for every project, because some projects, again, are not that complicated. You can probably do it by a drive-by window review. But this is just common sense stuff that I appreciate the city manager and whoever else brought this forward. It just makes sense to me.
Mayor Matthews, and then Councilmember Schneider.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. So forgot what we were talking about. Oh, yes. I'm sorry, brain. So I spent several years on the planning commission, and so this was a huge issue for us. And so I'm very appreciative of this issue and fully endorse it. I think the random actually gives it more of a chance of being something that folks actually work to have, their trees there or not everything dead. If you know that people are, I don't know, I think it goes both ways, but if I knew that I had to clean my room every day versus like mom might just come randomly check it, I don't know what the difference is. But either way, I think it's a good idea. The one thing I do worry about is turning neighbor into like neighbor watchdog. I don't see that going in a positive direction. So I would probably avoid that direction of saying, hey, rat out your neighbor and, let us know if that just doesn't, nothing good comes of that. So I would say either software, like Councilmember Fantroy Johnson said, that sends everybody gets a letter that these were the conditions with your project. And so we assume that you will follow these conditions by these dates, and we will check up on it in the upcoming years at random. And that's enough.
Councilmember Schneider.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I agree that this is a huge step forward that gives the community confidence in fairness, that when, mitigation measures are being asked for, that they'll be applied, and then there will be checkups afterwards. I think random is great. If one day we were able to check up on all, sure, but I think the randomness might actually, if you knew that your number was coming up, you might do something different just for appearances. I don't know, but random just seems awesome. And not all mitigations required are equally appreciated by all sides. And oh man, I remember one that just hit council hard. It hit the staff hard, and it was just like, okay, let's pick our battles. Let's not push this too hard, and I was just thinking, wait a minute, what's fair here, So anyway, I'm greatly appreciative that this is moving forward, and it's about fairness. It's not about what certain people living in a certain place might prefer to have happened rather than what actually did happen. Thank you.
I have one suggestion just to try something out. It wouldn't be appropriate in every situation, but a complicated project that involves some impact on neighbors or suits the interests of neighbors. Conditions could be posted at the time of the occupancy permit or the permit for a building, a commercial development of some sort. Posting for the neighbors, for anyone, those amenities or mitigations or whatever that are expected to be followed through over the course of time, so that there's a notice period in which people understand, and the residents or the family has a sense of, this is what our neighbors expect over time. That might work in some situations if the conditions have been sort of hard won and are really significant. Are there further comments? And City Manager, did you?
Well,
Yep.
just in terms of responding to the dialogue, but not to participate in the debate, I think the randomness has some benefits. It allows us to multiply our efforts without having to do every project. We also want to we want to be fair about this. We're not trying to pick on any specific person. And also just, we know if we do this, it's a matter of bringing everybody along, the council, city staff, and applicants to this idea. The first reaction from some staff is this is going to be a lot more extra work for us if we can't do this. But we also have little things, dynamics, such as I've already been told that one of the reasons why we're going to have a harder time than other cities, I was told, is that the gaining access to completed projects will be difficult. Property owners won't let us on the site to proof what they have done. And that's something that we would have to get to. But those are the types of things we think about as we go forward. But I do think that, and we could listen to council discussion. I think it might be good to come up with different applicant pools, in other words. And the idea is we want to look at these things a couple of years after they've been completed, when either people have had enough time to either ignore some of the requirements or keep them. And so we want to have a sense a couple of years down the road of what's happening with these conditions.
Councilmember Hightopoulos?
Yeah, just one thing. I mean, I absolutely agree for budget reasons and a lot of reasons that the randomness makes sense. I think that should be one thing that we do. I don't think it should become a way of precluding a targeted review. So if a bunch of complaints come forward or a complaint on a significant project, this condition never happened or has been undone or whatever, I hope that we would not be establishing some sort of expectation that couldn't happen.
And I would acknowledge that, no, this doesn't replace what we might have already been doing, or for example, other forms of responses to land use or other code enforcement. Again, this is intended to address the more run-of-the-mill projects. When I mean run-of-the-mill, most projects get approved and they are not revisited when they're completed.
Mhm. We are very close to perfectly on time. Our next item is to introduce. Oh, we have not voted. I'm sorry, I'm rushing. A vote on the motion. The motion is part of the record. Do you want to repeat it or? Yeah.
All those in favor?
I think we could just say all those.
All's in favor, yes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, it's unanimous. I think the city manager has a good sense of the council's will. So our next item is to discuss options related to historic preservation. And the city manager, do you want to?
Right, the deputy city manager
Yeah.
is going to be
Good.
presenting
In the present.
the options that we want to come back. This is a good study session topic. We have some alternatives for the council to consider and weigh out and give us additional direction.
Yeah.
And very briefly, as the council knows, the council had previously provided direction with regard to the disposition of Historic Preservation Commission. We were directed to, we being staff were given our marching orders and assigned tasks. But in the process of doing this, some other ideas and suggestions were presented to us. We want to bring those ideas and suggestions back to the council and gauge which direction the council would like to go with those suggestions. And the deputy city manager can make the presentation.
Good evening, Council. Ellen Schroer, Deputy City Manager, and thank you to the City Manager for introducing this topic. Just have a couple of slides to provide some context for this, and then I'm looking forward to receiving your discussion and guidance on this. We last talked about this in March of this year, and so glad to be back to provide just a couple more items for you to consider as we move forward. Next one. The city of Bainbridge Island has paid attention to historic preservation for decades. We have been a certified local government. That's a designation provided by the National Park Service since 2004. That designation carries both benefits and some obligations. The benefits include access to funding, technical assistance from the federal and state government, and other benefits such as allowing us to add new properties to our historic register, and those properties can then receive a reduced tax benefit. On the obligation side, we have to have a qualified Historic Preservation Commission that meets regularly, protect the historic properties in our community, and maintain inventories, facilitate public participation, and spend good time and effort on this topic with our community. Maintaining our commission requires eligible and interested volunteers and also staff support. Since about a year ago, we haven't had an active Historic Preservation Commission, which is why we're having this conversation tonight. Also want to add that our approach, the city's approach to historic preservation programming, has some aspects that are unique to our community and have been added more so than in other communities. For example, we have a historic island farm property designation. We have heritage properties, a heritage tree register, and signage for road ends. These are all part of our historic preservation program, part of our historic preservation code that have been added in response to community priorities. Also want to just note that having an active Historic Preservation Commission is an ongoing commitment of staff and volunteer time and commitment of funding to make those things happen. Last year, our historic preservation commissioners all resigned at one time, so we started having this conversation with you. In August of last year, we officially placed the historic preservation on hiatus while we considered various options, and council worked with us to reassign some functions to the planning commission so that we could continue to adhere to the requirements in our code related to historic structures. At that time, we didn't make any changes to our historic preservation criteria, standards, or definitions, so continued to provide all of the programming that's in our code, although through the Planning Commission rather than through the Historic Preservation Commission. Of course, without the Historic Preservation Commission volunteers, the level of effort was different and some of the expertise was different. At the beginning of this year, council decided that we would deactivate the Historic Preservation Commission, and staff began to work on this. At that time, we also we received a suggestion and offer of support from the Bainbridge Island History Museum that would allow us to maintain the Historic Preservation Commission with their help in recruiting volunteers to be on that commission. They also at that time suggested some reductions in programming. And I want to thank the History Museum, their staff and board members for meeting with staff, for meeting with me to explain this, and so that we can offer to you the different option that we hadn't talked about before. So there are three options that staff has kind of worked up for your review. I will note that in the agenda bill, I made an error and the option numbers don't match up with options 2 and 3 are reversed in the motion. So when we get to the part where we're talking about the motion, I'll just want to make sure that we clearly understand your guidance. But to step through these three options, the first option that is presented here sort of in a summarized fashion and more completely in the table in your packet is to continue on the path we were on in March, to deactivate the Historic Preservation Commission and move the current functions that are in Chapter 18 of the code to the Planning Commission. This aligns with the direction you gave us before, maintains local programming with the same kind of words and scope that we currently have. We will no longer be a certified local government because we will not have a Historic Preservation Commission, and it will add some functions to the Planning Commission related to heritage properties, historic farms, and other programming that is in Chapter 18 of our municipal code. We do expect that to make that possible, we will need to identify some outside subject matter expertise so that the Planning Commission can be supported in making the determinations that they would need to make. The second option that I'll present tonight is the one that the History Museum has presented to us. This is a way to retain, they suggest that we retain the Historic Preservation Commission, and they are offering to help us find folks in the community who have the expertise and the time and the desire to volunteer as members of the Historic Preservation Commission. They are supportive of this option and that is the one that they would suggest that you select. This relies on finding at least 5 people who are able to meet regularly to consider options or topics related to historic preservation. They do suggest that we consider reducing somewhat the scope. The History Museum suggested some items that we could take out of our current scope to make the meetings less frequent, to perhaps make them shorter, and then to perhaps also make it easier to find folks who would want to serve on that commission. This option means that we would maintain the certified local government status, and we would receive subject matter expertise and support from members of the Historic Preservation Commission and staff. So in this option, we would have a city committee that you would appoint. They would meet perhaps quarterly. That's the suggestion of the History Museum. And that would then have staff support dedicated to supporting that committee and attending the committee meetings. So roughly 5 to 10 hours of staff work per meeting that the HPC would have. And then on the third option is to kind of combine both of these, to both deactivate the Historic Preservation Commission and also take the History Museum's suggestions about where scope could be reduced. So in particular, you can see on the table, but I can just highlight for you things such as considering reducing or setting aside the heritage property program or the historic farm property program that is in our code. Or at this time, the HPC is designated as the body that would review suggestions for city road and historical signage. So under this suggestion, we would, for either option 2 or 3, we would take action to take that out of the code and address those questions through staff or in another way. So again, to summarize, option 1 is the original direction to deactivate the Historic Preservation Commission and move all of the current functions to the Planning Commission. Option number 2 is to retain the Historic Preservation Commission as it currently functions as a city committee, but to consider reducing the scope of the historic preservation programming on the island. And option 3 is to both deactivate the Historic Preservation Commission and to reduce the scope, which would move, and then to remove the remaining functions to the Planning Commission. So at this time, I am happy to turn this over to your discussion, and I will be careful to listen for which option you select as the option in the summary section that doesn't match perfectly with the option in the suggested action box on your agenda bill.
I'd like to start by thanking you, Ellen, for the attention you gave to the initiatives by the History Museum. They bring a lot of background to this, understanding. I mean, Dave Williams, for example, was instrumental in creating the chapter, the program in our code. And now he is suggesting slimming it down and making it more manageable for any commission going forward. That option is the path I prefer, but I certainly want to listen to the other opinions of colleagues here. I don't know who was first. I'd like to.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'll just go down the line.
Sure.
Councilmember Dietz first.
Great. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And thank you, Ellen, for that presentation. Well, I'm I'll just say a little bit torn between knowing the motions were a little scrambled. Option 1, which was sort of our original idea, it sounds like moving this to the Planning Commission, sounded fine. But the idea of retaining the Historic Preservation Commission, reducing its scope. In other words, the suggestions of the History Museum. That interests me as well. Now, they did say we will find people for you to join the committee. Well, it doesn't work that way. I mean, we have to have an open process. So that would be a bad road to take, to say, yeah, we'll just take your recommendations. We can't do that. It's whoever applies. And that is as it should be. So I just want to say, be careful with the application process. It can't be. I don't want us to be shown as we're just selecting who the History Museum is selecting. I think that could be construed as not a good deal. The other thing, I am curious about that designation, because it seems like the reason of having this Historic Preservation Commission is to have this designation. And maybe I'm looking for some institutional history. Have we ever relied or ever made use of the benefits from the designation? Has that ever, in the 20 years since 2004, since this thing, we've had this, have we ever made use of it? And that would be a question, and I look forward to other discussion.
Yeah. Councilmember Hytopoulos, and then Councilmember Schneider, and Councilmember Marawaki.
Well, I'm supportive of the second option, and I certainly agree with Councilmember Dietz. I don't think we would create a new process for appointing, but it's always helpful when people in the community have subject matter interest and push people to us. I mean, it happens, right? People try to find people to run for council or get on a planning commission, or so I don't have a problem with that. I think there's, I can't answer the question, and I don't know if this deputy city manager can look into it. So what, if any, like, for example, funding we've gotten as a result of being a certified local government. But I like the idea, first of all, that that's available. I like the idea that the expertise is available. I like the idea that it's a commitment. Many other cities and counties have this as well. It's a requirement to have access to certain levels of support from the state and funds that are available. And because it requires us then to actually designate and pay attention to make thoughtful decisions about allowing for the destruction of historic properties, identifying, inventorying them. It's not something that every day, maybe everybody, it's not as sexy as a lot of stuff that we do, but it's kind of an ongoing obligation as a city government, I think, and as a community to take care of those things. And I'm sure that's why the museum wants to see this happen. I think that if we reconstitute that committee and we do a good job, the commission, some of the issues we had before, maybe also reducing the scope, we may not have those same issues. We do well with a lot of our committees, and I think we should give it a try.
Councilmember Schneider.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I have a different opinion, with maybe a little bit of data. The city manager showed me a list of times when we did apply for grants and got them. I remember seeing 3, maybe there were 4, maybe there were 5, I don't know, but I remember seeing 3, and I remember seeing the numbers 7,000, 20,000, and some other very small number. So, and I don't remember what the time period was for that, but I think it was a good long time period. So I don't think, and the 20,000 one had to do with the historic farmland, which we as a city have also invested our own general fund monies into as well. So if that is the main reason why the History Museum would like us to continue, I would say it doesn't feel like a beneficial exchange for us. So I would prefer to stick with where we have been in the past versus trying to resurrect this committee. And for, apparently chasing not very many grants for not very much benefit. If there's a different outlook that, maybe that would change, change the accounting somewhat, but the other thing that I just would, like my colleagues to consider is that I'm going to be bringing back a proposal to talk about reinstituting a sustainable transportation group, and the city manager has asked us to please, not add yet another one back to it. And yet this is one that is in our comp plan. It's the one that's in our code. And I feel that we have, a discernible need for. So I'm good with option 1.
Councilmember Marawaki, and then Mayor Matthews and Councilmember Fantroy Johnson. Yeah. Unmute. Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks, Deputy Mayor. I'm looking at the chart that's in the agenda packet, which is more detailed than what was shown up on the slide. And I would lean toward option 2 or 3 for several reasons. One, it streamlines the objectives of what we would require the register eligible project, the heritage property program, historic farmlands. It streamlines what the work might be. I do want to make a thank you to the Historical Museum for stepping up and asking, or at least giving us some recommendations. Councilmember Dietz and Councilmember Toplis are correct. They could make suggestions, but of course we would still do our natural process should we have a commission. But I would like someone out there bird dogging and pre-screening people and getting people excited to want to be part of this. The one thing that either one of these 2 options are, especially if we do consider doing a commission, is that meeting monthly was just too frequent. There weren't that many issues that required 12 meetings a year, and sometimes you might only be 2 meetings a year. So at a minimum, this quarterly suggestion just makes sense. From having been on that a liaison to that commission. And the benefit for option 3 would be just regular. So there's 2 ways to look at this. If you go with the option 2, that would mean that this commission, things would funnel through there. And so if there was something coming forward, you might have to wait a couple months. However, option 3, the planning commission meets pretty frequently. And so it could be flexible. Should there be an issue come up, it could react and discuss that. So talking this through, I'm kind of leaning toward 3. I just want to hear more discussion and something Councilmember Schneider pointed out, and I asked the same question to the city manager. What is the benefit to a certified local government what have we really received in it? Yeah, I saw the same table, Leslie and Councilor Schneider, and it was years ago, and it's modest. So I'm not sure what benefit we were having as a city just to have that designation. Maybe the city manager, the deputy city manager might want to elaborate on that. So my thoughts are, thinking out loud, I would prefer option 3, and my fallback would be option 2. Thanks.
Sorry.
Mayor Matthews and then Councilmember Fentroy Johnson.
Ooh, sorry about that. So I would say, for me, I guess this depends on a couple questions of deputy city manager. I'm leaning towards option 2 or 3, depending on if staff sees this as something realistic that they can put on their plate quarterly. If it was something that was like, no, we can't do this, option 3 is what we're thinking, okay. What concerns me about option 3 is Planning Commission has a lot on their plate right now. And going forward, I'm not, after the comp plan and all the other things that they have going on, I don't know if this is their best use. And so I would lean towards option 2, especially if we think using the same logic that we used in discussing the artwork in here. The History Museum took the time to meet with us and give a recommendation. Is that my car alarm going on? Okay, I have a feeling it sounds like it. So option 2 or 3, depending on if it's something that staff can realistically handle or if they have a preference. But I do support option 2 with Councilmember Hytopoulos as my first choice.
Yeah, Councilmember Fentroy Johnson.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So when we say, because now I just
Yeah.
got confused, when we say option 2 or 3, are we talking in the presentation or are we talking about? Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you what I support. I think that I'll be glad that the those duties will still be getting done, right? We may not have a lot more historical buildings, but we still have other things that need to happen. And so if the Planning Commission can take those duties, I am all for that without creating or resurrecting this committee.
City manager.
Just to respond to the council's questions, and I think this is an excellent policy discussion for
Yeah.
the council to have. Yes, we did keep track of the grants we've received from being a CLG. In 2013, the city received an $8,000 grant to conduct an historic structure inventory and survey. And then in 2019, it's received $10,000 to conduct a historic structure and survey. So it looked like the same task, both in 2013 and 2019. In 2015, the city received a $6,600 grant for a historic farm survey. And then in 2016, the city received $20,000 for the Suamatsu Farm Historic Report. So those are the 4 grants that the city has received through the CLG. And one other piece of information, whether it's helpful or not, the city of Seattle is a CLG city. The city of Tacoma is a CLG city. And just for comparison, Poulsbo is not, and Bremerton is not. There are cities, a variety of cities in King County, we found out, that have an interlocal agency agreement between with the King County Landmarks Commission, which allows them to be a CLG city, but they do not have a CLG or commission within the city. They are using King counties.
Councilmember Hytopoulos, and then I have some comments as
Well,
well.
I pulled up again the list of cities that are CLG participants, and because again, I know I'm not an expert in this, and it's not just about the funding, although I will say that I don't sneeze at the funding that was just mentioned. I mean, these are things that would not, we don't budget for these things. We don't have a lot of budget ourselves as staff, as council members. If we want to do something like a $20,000 study of the farmland, where does that come from? So that from the council perspective, those chunks of money matter. The other thing that matters is just, again, it's the dedication and an outside pressure to make sure that whoever's sitting on city council, whoever's developing Bainbridge Island, that there has to be some attempt to preserve. But I just want to point out, I just want to list off a few cities, and I will note if they're interlocal and not standalone. Aberdeen, I think I'd like to be as good as Aberdeen. Aberdeen, Anacortes, Auburn, that's interlocal. Bainbridge Island right now, Battleground interlocal. Bellingham, Black Diamond interlocal. Bothell, Burien interlocal. Burlington, Camas interlocal. Carnation, interlocal. Centralia, Chehalis, Cheney, Clark County is a county. Clay Elum, Colfax, College Place, Colville, Concrete. Covington, Cowlitz County, Dayton, Des Moines, interlocal, Edmonds, Ellensburg, Enumclaw, interlocal, Everett, Federal Way. I could keep going, right? I'm just in the Fs. Gig Harbor's on here if you care. Port Townsend is on here. I'm trying to think of other cities that we like to feel like we might have some connection to. So I think, I just hope everybody who's voting on this has thought this through and isn't just, you know, rashly throwing away the designation or the level of commitment to history. Yeah, we've probably already lost a lot of history here, but we do still have historical, you know, structures. And, you know, 20 years from now, something we might not think is historical will be historical. This is an ongoing task.
I'll call on Councilmember Schneider, but first I'd like to speak a bit. I've been a volunteer on this island for more than 20 years, starting, I think, with the Historical Society, as it used to be called. Hysterical Society, it was sometimes called, but I was involved with the History Museum and a board member over the years in which everything came out of the shadows. Hank Helm provided great leadership, and they raised money that they weren't able to get from the city. And that set a course that is continuing today. There's a great deal of interest in this museum on the part of people new to the island, as well as the old timers who used to dominate the small meetings that took place and the work of that. If we proceed with option 2, it would be productive to be connected with the History Museum. And they would help us to identify individuals who have these special credentials. You don't just have to have a volunteer interest. You need some training in the discipline of historical inquiry and especially understanding of buildings of a certain age and what it takes to qualify if a building is proposed for status as historic and so on. I believe there's energy within the History Museum. You know that they're expanding and developing more programs. I think the city would be letting them down and letting our community down if we back away from all of this potential. Because more could be done than has been done and so on. So that's my perspective on it. I think that it would not be a great burden on staff with the energy that we would receive from volunteers and the programmatic interest of the History Museum. And now I call on Councilmember Schneider.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So, you know, I may be sort of an outlier here, and that's okay. I also wanted to just clarify a position that I was realizing after the fact may not have been clear. So I said that I was supporting option 1, which I am, but I would also support option 3, which would, you know, reduce the burden on the Planning Commission. But I also wanted to just throw out another thought too, which is that since the grant money is not free money, it does come with the backdrop, the foundation that, you know, we have staff hours going into the sustaining of the Historic Commission. What if we were to create a substitute fund that, similar to the arts fund, that could be allocated, and then to bring in the Historic Museum as a real partner in this and figure out a way for recommendations to come in, sort of, red flags like, ooh, there's something we should be paying attention to, and then maybe they could be recommending the professional resources that we would need in order to give the Planning Commission the professional information that it needed. So anyway, I just wanted to throw those out there because we do have a very unbalanced accounting of how much in grants we get versus how much city staff time goes into maintaining the commission. And then I guess as a final point, if we, did decide to have a reduced version of the Historic Preservation Commission, could we make it, could we have a high bar of the kind of professional background that they had so that we would be, so that we were getting real expertise from the community? And then if we didn't, then we could, reconsider another option like what we're discussing tonight. Thank you.
I've got my eye on the clock, and I'm also thinking that we're getting close to the kind of decision-making that belongs in a business meeting. Perhaps we could just move along without taking a final vote on one option over the others. What's the will of the council?
I actually like that. I'll just say thank you, Deputy Mayor, because I have not a firm opinion yet, and I'd like to make a more considered vote on this. I would want to, maybe this is slightly outside the scope, but when we're talking about historical preservation, I hope that includes Indigenous history. So because I don't think that has been the case. So I just want to make sure that's part of if we're going to go through this process, make sure that we're not just talking about colonial. So otherwise, my discussion would be very different. So I'm fine with not moving on tonight unless colleagues feel differently.
Councilmember Hanford Johnson, then Councilmember Hitopoulos and the mayor.
Yeah, I'm fine with, because I feel like I need more information. I feel like I don't have enough to settle myself on which direction that.
So I agree, and I think that I wasn't even thinking about the fact that we'd be making a decision. I think that as we need public comment opportunity as well, which could also fill in some of the blanks, so.
Mayor.
I agree wholeheartedly with that. I think it gives us the opportunity to receive public comment on the issue, and as well as hear from maybe the Historical Museum at a public meeting during comment. Just one comment about the Indigenous. So I had never interfaced at all or really interacted with the Historic Museum besides being once. And Anshu put together a really, really great committee for Juneteenth. I would say one of the highlights of probably this year has been the group that came together to work on Juneteenth. And one of those folks was from the Historical Museum, and her wealth and breadth of knowledge on things Indigenous, but also African-American history here in Kitts. I mean, it was actually blew me away and changed how I thought about this issue also, so.
Councilmember Morawaki.
Not just, I assumed we were taking it to a business meeting, so I was confused by the suggestion. I thought we were just going to move this on to a business meeting, that's all.
Okay. Well, let's move to item 3D, to review the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee's work.
We could have enough time
Yes.
if it depends on you.
Yeah.
So Adam Neversall is going to provide you the background of where we stand with our scoring matrix, scoring criteria, and the schedule for the lodging tax.
Yep. Thank you, City Manager Adam Nebenzahl, Management Analyst. So hopefully be able to get through these two presentations tonight. I know you have another meeting right after this. But so the first one that I will at least get to tonight is the 2026 Lodging Tax Award. This is a process in which the City Council receives recommendations from the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee through a request for proposal process. And we'll be just going through that really briefly this evening. So just 3 sections to this evening to review the award cycle schedule, review the estimated award amount for 2026, and then discuss the selection criteria and eligibility. So currently where we are is currently in the month of June, and we are continuing at this moment to recruit Lodging Tax Advisory Committee members. We have been struggling again this year to recruit members, so I encourage, if you know anyone that would be eligible and interested to participate, please reach out to them, have them fill out an application to volunteer. In July, at the July 8th council meeting, the hope is to bring back after this discussion this evening, if there's any further discussion regarding the RFP and the application, bringing that back for your consideration on a business meeting for a formal vote for this process moving forward. In August, the hope is to open up the RFP process around mid-August, with the application closing at the end of September. The Lodging Tax Advisory Committee would then review the proposals, have interviews or presentations, and then come to a decision in October, with then a recommendation coming back to the City Council for your vote in November. So the planned funding level for this year for 2026 is $400,000. And this is based on the award to be fully supported by the starting fund balance of the Civic Improvement Fund. As we look at annual LTAC revenue, we see that it's been slowly increasing over the past 4 years. However, with ongoing economic uncertainty, we still keep a conservative estimate in terms of what we estimate for 2025 in terms of annual LTAC revenue. That number for this year, we're estimating to be approximately $350,000. As we look at the year-end fund balance, we have seen that it has slowly been increasing over time. However, we do expect that because we believe that LTAC revenue will decrease a little bit this year, plus the 2025 eligible amount of $400,000 from previous years, we do expect to see a decrease in the fund balance at the end of 2025. As we look towards the awards between 2022 and through 2025, over the past 4 years, it has been mostly the same. 2022 is an outlier of $350,000. However, 2023 through 2025, the award has been consistently at $400,000. So where it gets a little bit confusing is regarding to project eligibility for LTAC awards and then organizations that are eligible for LTAC awards. So I will quickly just go through that. Applicants eligible for LTAC awards must either be a municipality, a convention and or visitors bureau, a destination marketing organization, a nonprofit, a lodging association, a chamber of commerce, or a public facilities district. Organizations or individuals that are not eligible, including, as I just mentioned, single individuals, for-profit businesses, and also proposals from organizations with a board member, officer, or staff member serving on the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. That last bullet point is actually a criterion that has been added by the City Council from previous years and has just been maintained. The other requirements are actually per RCW, Revised Code of Washington requirements. As I mentioned, it gets a little bit confusing with the project eligibility for LTAC awards, so I like to go into a little bit more detail every year regarding this. So municipalities and public facilities district have a little bit more in terms of eligibility for awards. So if a municipality or public facilities district submits a proposal, they can submit for operations of owned or operated tourism facilities, capital expenditures of these facilities, tourism marketing operations of special events and festivals designed to attract tourists. One example is the July 4th. That's a festival designed to attract tourism. Repayment of general obligation bonds for eligible capital projects, and repayment of revenue bonds for eligible capital projects. Where it comes in for nonprofits, where it differs is that they are eligible for tourism marketing, marketing and operations of special events, and the operations of tourism-related facilities. They are not eligible for capital expenditures in this situation. That is the distinct difference between the two. As we go through the threshold criteria, there are three things that the state requires that the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee at minimum consider when looking at proposals. These three things are listed under our impact topic, which I will briefly get to in further slides. But so the first one is, does the proposal encourage tourism from visitors traveling more than 50 miles and from visitors traveling from outside Washington State or outside the country? What is the expected impact on increasing overnight stays and paid accommodations on the island? And what is the expected increased tourism? Where they define tourism as economic activity resulting from tourists, which may include sales of overnight lodging, meals, tours, gifts, or souvenirs. Now, as we look at what the evaluation criteria that the city has in previous years added on in that additional criteria and that we are still maintaining this year, as we look at impact, does the proposal target off-season tourism? Does the proposal provide clear metrics of success? For organizational capacity, we look at, does this service likely to continue operating throughout the funding cycle and beyond? Will the city's funds be used wisely and responsibly? Does the organization have a successful track record or expertise in encouraging tourism? Is it clear who the applicant is, what they do, what they are requesting, and who they serve? For community need, does the proposal demonstrate that there is a significant need in our community via recent demographic or usage data? Does the proposal provide an innovative use of LTAC funds? Does the proposal clearly explain how it prevents duplicating other services for Bainbridge Island residents? For equity and inclusion, does the proposal show how the organization's work contributes to a more diverse, equitable, inclusive, and accessible Bainbridge? Does the proposal describe how the organization has worked towards a greater understanding of DEI? The two more sections include collaboration. So does the organization have a history of collaborating with other organizations? Will the applicant partner or collaborate with other organizations? And does the proposal include matching funds or services? For alignment, how well does the proposal align with the goals of the city's Lodging Tax Advisory Committee funding and the city's overall priority, including climate, equity, and sustainability? And does the proposal support tourism that reduces carbon emissions or promotes alternative forms of transportation other than automobiles? And then finally, for capital, if it is a capital project, if the proposal is for an eligible capital project by a municipality or public facilities district, how will the proposal's expected impact increase tourism? I apologize for how tiny the words are, but what I went through in the previous slides is what is on there. So you've previously seen that, but basically is all those questions you will see that is also on the application. So there is consistency between there. And the way that is laid out is the topic on the left and the maximum score on the right. When the staff met with the council liaisons earlier this month, we discussed how they wanted to prioritize the maximum score, and this is how the council liaisons laid out that maximum score. So what I'm hoping just for tonight is just to get a confirmation on the criteria and confirm the amount to be rewarded. If there's any other further feedback that you would like to provide at this time. As we mentioned, the summer will continue to still recruit more Lodging Tax Advisory Committee members, and in August, we'll issue the request for proposals. And I will look forward to this discussion and hopefully if there's any other feedback.
Councilmember Dietz first, and then Councilmember Fantroy Johnson.
Great. I'm just simply going to make the motion. I move forward the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee request for proposal process criteria and scoring matrix for approval at the July 8th regular business meeting.
A second.
Yes. Is there further discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Clarence, well, we'll, any opposed? Yeah, right. Okay, all right. So we have just one more item, and it is a similar presentation.
Can we do that?
Could Yes, we will delay the beginning of the special meeting, special city council meeting to cover this last item. Reviewing cultural funding request for the request for proposal process and the criteria and scoring matrix. Adam, again, thank you.
Thank you. I will make this brief. A lot of the things, some of the things that you'll see in the previous presentation are similar to this one. So cultural funding is a process and an item that the city council in previous years actually created. And this is something where funds are actually taken from the general fund to promote cultural funding programs. So cultural funding, the purpose is proposals for cultural funding projects and activities that we believe this will benefit Bainbridge Island residents and visitors. This was created to avoid ongoing one-time requests for funding from organizations to the city. This is a brief section from the cultural element explaining, from the comprehensive plan in the cultural element, explaining the purpose of cultural funding. And without reading the entire thing just due to time, I do want to just highlight that this cultural element continues to recognize that the arts and humanities significantly contribute to the city's identity, sense of place, and economy, showing the need and the desire to want to help invest in the community in arts and cultural funding. As I mentioned, we are also looking for more members to apply for Cultural Funding Advisory Task Force. So I make the same ask. If you happen to know anyone that would be interested in participating, please have them apply. We will also be putting out the RFP around mid-August with the same closing date of around September. We like to stagger the process between lodging tax and cultural funding in terms of interviews, presentations, and deliberations. So those processes will happen basically back to back in terms of weeks in October. And we hope to have the recommendation brought back to you in November for approval. The planned funding level for 2026 and 2027 was partially agreed upon in the previous biennium budget for $300,000. That is spread out over 2 years, so $150,000 in 2026 and $150,000 in 2027. As I mentioned, the funding is supported by the general fund. Applicants may seek a minimum annual award of $5,000 and a maximum annual award of $50,000. I do want to add that this year we have added something new. Speaking to the council liaisons in May, we are putting forward, and you'll see this in the RFP, that we are also now including capital projects as an eligible part of the application. Previously, it was only project support and operating support, but the council liaisons felt it was also possible to include capital projects in that as we move forward for something to consider. As we look towards the awards of that $300,000, you can see since 2018, that amount of funding has stayed the same, and it will stay the same, assuming that it is approved by the city council this year. Organizations that are eligible must either be a 501c3 tax exempt status and must also be in continuous operation for a minimum of 2 years and must have at least one ongoing cultural program open to the public or that provides services such as training, admin support, technical assistance, and more to arts professionals on Bainbridge Island. If an organization doesn't meet at least the first 2 requirements, they are able to apply under a fiscal sponsorship of another organization that has that required status, meaning the 501c3 status and the continuous operation for a minimum of 2 years. This fiscal sponsor provides the oversight of the project and must agree to enter into a funding contract with the city in that situation. Funding must be used for majority of services provided on Bainbridge Island, or the capital project must be on Bainbridge Island, and to be service, and the services must be provided during the calendar year of 2026 and 2027. The criteria are very similar in terms of the topics. So the impact, we say, does the proposal improve services on Bainbridge Island? The community need, does the strength of the demonstration that there's a significant need in our community via recent demographic data? And is there clarity of explanation how the proposal avoids duplicating of services? Organizational capacity, is this service likely to continue for the 2-year cycle and beyond? And then will the city's funds be used responsibly and wisely? And for equity and inclusion, similarly to lodging tax, does the proposal show how the organization work contributes to a more diverse, equitable, inclusive, and accessible Bainbridge Island? And does it describe how the organization has worked towards a deeper understanding of DEI? And then finally, with alignment, does the proposal align with the goals of the city's cultural funding element in the comprehensive plan, as well as support the city values in climate, equity, and inclusion and sustainable transportation? I'm happy to say that these words are a little bit bigger on the slide. And so you can see the topic and impact. As I mentioned with lodging tax, the city council liaisons also provided feedback on their priorities this year. And you can see here, they laid out the maximum score in terms of impact, where 30 points will be dedicated for impact, community need at 25, equity inclusion at 20, alignment at 15, and organizational capacity at 10. And similarly, in terms of next steps, looking for any further feedback this evening. If not, we will happily bring this back to you on July 8th for approval.
Councilmember Dietz.
Great. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Adam. I'm just going to make the motion. I move forward the cultural funding request for proposed process criteria and scoring matrix for approval at the July 8th regular business meeting.
Second.
Yes. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. And I think that completes this meeting. Meeting is adjourned.